A disclaimer before we begin. We're here today to talk about Menace. The game released into early access yesterday, but due to wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff, we recorded this 10 days ago. At the time of recording, we did not know what was included in the early access release, so it's possible after listening to this, you're imagining me with egg on my face. Welcome to the next episode of the Critical Moves podcast. I'm Al, and today I'm here with my main guy, Adam.
Oh, hi Al. Hi, not mentioned, Jack.
And Jack. Jack was next. What do you mean?
Hello, both of you.
Are you good, mate?
I am. Yeah, I don't know about Al. Adam.
How was the generational storm?
It wasn't that bad over here.
Well, as long as you survived. Today, gentlemen, we're here to talk about Menace. This is the turn-based tactics game from Overhype Studios and published by Hooded Horse, which was released into early access yesterday. It's from the Battle Brothers team, and we've all played the demo. That's correct, isn't it?
Yeah, I've played the demo. I've beaten the demo.
You've beaten the demo. Okay, well, let's start with you then. What did you think of the demo?
I think initially, whenever I played the game, I didn't quite understand exactly what I was supposed to be doing. My game actually soft locked. It froze whenever I clicked on the squad button instead of starting the first mission. And it took me a moment to try to understand why it kept telling me, it kept giving me a warning before starting the first mission. So all these things I think Adam might have referred to before whenever they were suggesting that we needed a guide off of Steam that it linked me to, but I didn't follow any guides personally. I kind of just clicked around and figured out what they wanted me to do in the squad menu. I got in, I played my 3 missions, I beat the demo, and by the end of it, I had a good time. I reached my flow state, I understood how the game was played, and I beat the 3 missions necessary to kind of reach the end of the prevention of the pirate invasion. And I had a good time.
Good, because there's no tutorial, is there? You just kind of like straight into it.
No, there's no tutorial at all.
Adam, what did you think of the learning curve? Was it easy to get into?
Yeah, you see, like, I do believe that this game requires either the tutorial or at least some easing into the game itself. So basically, you start by choosing the team and choosing the loadout for the team. And from that point, basically you have huge chunks of text and information that are given to you, and you need to maybe not understand, but just click randomly. And I would prefer to get some, I don't know, default team or default setup or something like that to start experimenting. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. So yeah, as Jack mentioned, I was kind of scared by the tutorial, and I too haven't read it and played the game, and yeah, I haven't finished it, unfortunately.
So for the uninitiated, and I'm sure there'll be very, very few who are uninitiated who are listening to this podcast episode, because Menace has been on our radar for a long time, and it seems to be the most anticipated or one of the most anticipated strategy games of the year. And I say of the year in 2026, but it received an award in 2024 for most anticipated. It was delayed in 2025. We're now in 2026 and it's released. Jack, give us a rundown. What is Menace?
Right, so Menace is a turn-based RTS tactics strategy game. It plays a little bit unconventionally to some other turn-based tactics games. Menace is the type of turn-based where instead of taking a turn where you move each of your units to the maximum of their general action points or whatever resource they'll give you, Menace actually forces you to take a turn with a single unit and then watch the enemy take their turn. And so sometimes it's kind of confusing because maybe they do have they do kind of maybe use the turn-based roster that you see where you'll see some of your units on the side and then some of the enemies like they're mixed in, because there was times where I would move my units and then the enemy would move, or I would move my units or 2 or 3 of my units in a row. But generally, yes. So Menace is a turn-based tactics game. You take a turn with one unit, the enemy takes a turn with theirs. It's like you're playing chess rather than playing some of these other squad-based tactics games where you get to move all of your pieces on the board and then end your turn, and then the enemy gets to move all of theirs. So Menace is a very back and forth like that. It is a science fiction strategy game with based on an alien threat. Your job in Menace is to respond to basically SOS calls and emergency signals, land on those planets, discover the environment as you're moving across the field, because every level in Menace, every mission is procedurally generated. So you have to land, you have to explore the area, you have to use your units to the best of your ability, you have to eliminate the threat or complete the objectives they provide to you. And that is Menace. And there's supposedly a larger strategic layer on top of the game that we experienced that includes customizing like a larger spaceship with like artillery and weapons and equipment. And then there also seems like there's going to be additional mechanics that have to deal with like the signals you intercept and probably a larger form of story progression.
Because we don't know what the menace of the title is yet, do we? We've only, in the demo, you only fight on one planet. I think there's 10 missions, but you only maybe have 3 or 4 of them in a particular playthrough, and it's on one planet, and it's against the pirates, and there's no other factions that you face in the demo. Do we have any information on what the menace might be, or is it all just conjecture at the moment?
No, we do actually have a little bit of information about what the menace is, but that leans heavily into a larger topic that I think we should go ahead and start, which is the amount of, the lack of information we have on this game. The information we have about the menace in the story, the premise of the game and the namesake, is that it's a biomechanical horror. It is the Borg. You're going to be fighting cyborgs. It seems like the foot soldiers, at the very least, that make up the bulk of the Menace's army, are going to be humans that have been forcibly augmented into cyborgs to fight other humans. There was a cinematic trailer that came out 2 years ago to help announce the title, and that featured a twist at the end of the trailer where it changed from the kind of turn-based game that we played today into more of like a horrifying red atmosphere, horror aesthetic style game where there was cyborg zombies and some larger, massive alien creature in the fog overwatching. So that's the menace.
Well, before we get into that, because you're right, that is a subject that we want to touch on, is the complete lack of information that's come out. Let's focus on the demo for the time being. So, Adam, you've also played Battle Brothers, the other title from Overhype Studios. How do these two compare? And I appreciate we haven't seen the strategic layer of Menace yet, but how does the tactical layer compared to Battle Brothers?
To be honest, before you mentioned it, I didn't know that this exact studio created Battle Brothers, but after that, I would say they're pretty similar. The setting is completely different because Battle Brothers is set in this kind of medieval-ish style, and this game is sci-fi for sure, or horror, whatever, like we don't know yet. And the gameplay is quite similar, although the Battle Brothers were set on a hex grid map, as far as I remember. And the maps were really, maybe not really small, but quite small. And here, the scale is much bigger. So you don't have like, there your squad consisted of like 10, 12 guys. And here, 12 guys is like one team. And you control like a couple of teams in order to cope with the enemy.
It's one squad, right, isn't it? So the setting of Menace, or the format of Menace, however you might want to call it, is you have a squad leader, and you can maybe deploy 5 or 6 squads per mission, and each of the squad leaders has squaddies which form your squad. Now one thing I really did appreciate the second time I played Menace, because the first time I was like, wow, this is just, there's so much detail just in the tactical layer. But when I played it the second time and actually took my time to look at it, there's so many customization options on the tactical layer, isn't there?
Yeah, you can even name the squad members if I'm correct.
You can, yeah.
So yeah, like you have like specialists. You can have different weapons. You have different modifications. Each squad has their own, let's call it, tree, like this, that you can choose the skills for the squads. So, and you have different armors. I don't know. There's like if you open the game and look at it from the from get go without looking at the tutorial, I'm for sure you will be overwhelmed with the things you can do with each squad.
It isn't the kind of game that you can just jump straight into, is it, Jack?
It depends on what you mean by that.
What I mean is, you can't just load up Menace and hit play and go straight into. I mean, you can, but you're doomed to fail. Really, you need to take some time to go through the setup options before you can successfully play the mission.
Yeah, in that regard, there's no way you're going to boot up the game, at least for the first time, and then skip right through the game. In fact, it actually gives you a warning that you don't look through enough settings in the squad menu. It actually requires, or at the very least, it really pushes you to use as much of your supplies as possible with a minimum threshold of using 70% of them to get into the mission. So I don't think it completely prevents you, but I think you need to get it to at least 70 before the game starts yelling at you. But no, in that regard, you're not just going to boot up the game for the first time and hop right into a mission.
I see what they are doing in here because they basically want you to discover the game. On the other hand, like giving you default squad is still like enough. Maybe it's like easier point to start from because then you can play the game, get interested into it, and then read why this squad behaves in that way and this squad behaves in that way. And in that case, you get this loadout screen that, as you said, you basically cannot or really advise not to skip on. So you need to give to each squad their own weapons, armor, and stuff like that. And there's so much information out there. And like there's like 2% there, 5 damage there, two action points lost during something, and so on and so forth. For me, it was really overwhelming. And I don't know. I played lots of Next Fest demos out there, and we discussed a bunch of them with you, Jack, as I remember. I feel that at least giving us the default squad to play on would be really great idea for us to understand the game.
Maybe it would be, but it doesn't appear. Okay, I rephrase that. It appears to me that what Overhype Studios are trying to do here is they are heavily influencing you, if not forcing you, into making these tactical decisions before you take part, because they're saying this is actually vital to your ability to enjoy the game and your success at the game. So I can understand why they've done it. It is something which is probably going to put people off because they want to, they've got a shiny new game and they hit launch on Steam and they open the game and they want to get straight into a mission and start shooting things. Of course, that's what people want to do. But it isn't that kind of game. It is not that kind of game. I mean, when I first played it a couple of months ago, when I first played the demo, I was like, I found it really difficult to wrap my head around it because I was thinking, well, my favorite turn-based strategy game is Warhammer 40k Battle Sector, where you fill up your roster with troops, you hit launch and bang, you're straight into it, and you've got meaty space marines blowing things up. And this is a completely different approach. Jack, as the person who's played it the most out of all of us, can you just give us an idea or an overview of the action point system? Because there's things like you can deploy to use your special weapons, movement. Each time you use one of your weapons costs points. Give us a bit of an overview of how the action points work.
Right. So like a lot of games, Menace uses an action point system as like a currency that you as the player will be spending each turn to determine how many actions you can move. So similar to tabletop RPGs, similar to a lot of turn-based CRPGs, things like that in the past. Menace uses their action points with a few standard mechanics, I would say. Basically, you're able to move, and that spends action points based on how many tiles you move across the game. There's action points that get spent on basically deploying. So in the game, there's a cover system. Whenever you're exploring the world, if you encounter an obstacle or a building or natural obstruction like a group of rocks, and you set your units next to that, the tile that obstruction is on provides a form of cover that automatically gives almost like a stat bonus to your unit to improve something like their agility for people who have played tabletop RPGs. So it would be something like dexterity, where you would essentially it's adding a stat bonus onto their ability to dodge incoming fire. That being said, In order to utilize your units in cover to the best of their ability, you would need to spend 20 action points out of the 100 they give you for your turn to deploy your units, which means that they actually crouch down and basically embed themselves behind cover. There's also the special weapons, so you're able to carry at any given time as an infantry unit. You're able to carry a normal weapon of your choosing and special weapon. Some units can carry special weapons, some special weapons can just be used without needing to deploy. And then a lot of the fun ones, like the sniper rifle, the rocket launcher, they require you to actually have embedded yourself in the ground through deploying and spending 20 action points before you can use them. So what you'll often find is that the game is broken up on turns where you have to travel so many spaces to get into the zone of fighting, and then you would have to deploy, and then you still don't have enough action points to actually use your sniper rifle or rocket launcher that turn, so you'll actually have to wait until it rotates back around to that unit after several turns to be able to use that unit and their special weapon again. This also applies to various things like some of the equipment that you can carry. Sometimes those require you to be deployed. I think maybe there's a chance that happens with some of the vehicles, but I only used one, and it didn't require me to do anything in particular like that. There's also one more system that I want to touch on really quickly, unless I'm missing something huge, which is a suppression system. So in the game, at any given time, when you are taking enemy fire as a unit, you watch a little yellow bar build up, and that's actually your suppression meter. Whenever you apply suppressing fire to an enemy, their suppression meter increases. And what happens is, when a unit's suppression meter fills up all the way, it forces them to deploy. So now they're crouched down, which means at the start of their next turn, they would have to spend 20 action points to be able to get back up and move. Once you've deployed, you cannot move again unless you spend another 20 action points to redeploy, or I forget what the terminology was, but just be able to get up off your knees and move. What happens if you fill up somebody's suppression meter twice? So basically you've filled it up once, they've deployed, they're now crouched down on their knees. And then if you fill it up a second time, it actually forces them into a crawl position. And the crawl position requires them, it sets them to 0 action points until they crawl out of enemy fire into safety and can then move back into deployment and then back into a stance position. So this basically sets them back 40 action points and an additional turn. And so if that sounds complicated, it's just one of those things that I feel like I'm not going to be able to explain because the game didn't even bother doing it to people.
Yeah, it is quite complicated, to be honest. Okay, maybe because I really got like how it worked after playing, like trying the first scenario a bunch of times. It's not an easy system because their action points are not evenly distributed. What I feel that sometimes you lose like part of them. There are skills that you, for example, because you have, as far as I remember, 100 action points, and sometimes you can get like a decrease by 4 points if you do this, and increase it 2 points if you do this. So it's not like type of game that you can get either 3, 4, 5 moves. You can get one move and 3/4 of the next move, then you leave it for next turn, something like that. It's not an easy system. Like, it's quite convoluted.
I thought it was very complex, and I don't think that the UI is the most intuitive either. I did find, like deploying, and because there's no tutorial, because there's a lack of information about how to play. I appreciate you mentioned there's a Steam guide. Because there's a lack of information actually in the game in terms of how to play it. It took me 3 playthroughs before I realized how to deploy and the benefits of spending those 20 points to deploy and hunker down and get ready. But one thing that I really liked about this, and I didn't think I would, was the complete lack of any Overwatch. So you really have to think and plan how you're going to ambush people, how you're going to approach, because I think the first time I played, I just ran all of my guys forward, and it's like, okay, now I'm just waiting for the pirates to come and blow me up, which is what they did, because I didn't do it particularly well. So it encourages you to think very, very hard about what you're going to do. It encourages you to plan your moves. How are you going to approach the particular objective of that mission? This is going to it won't appeal to everybody. It's going to appeal to hardcore tactical gamers.
Hardcore, I don't know if hardcore is a good word, because when it comes to this type of games, there are 2 ways you can go for, so you can aim for. So one way of doing things is going so complex that you cannot simply comprehend all the information. And in my opinion, this is the paradox way, that some of their games are so complex, there's so much stuff in there that you simply cannot take into consideration every little detail because it's simply too complex. And this game goes the other way. So it goes the way of being really, really complex, but in a type of chess, as you mentioned. So if someone sits down, write down all the details, all the action points, all the skills, all the terrain, like all this stuff in their notes, and they spend really, maybe not really, but some time understanding this whole concept, they can make each move in completely aware of all the details. So it's not overly complex, and I would say it's hardcore, but it's type of the chess complex game.
I think it's much more complicated than chess.
All right, both of you, I have to admit something. I don't think this game is very hard at all. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. I'm just waiting for you to expand on that. I'm not saying that it's a hard game. I'm saying it's hardcore in terms of the mechanics that it employs. I'm not suggesting that it's difficult. I'm suggesting that the amount of granularity there is in the systems, and like even the weapons have like a accuracy bar and a penetration bar, and it's you've got to find the sweet spot because you can be too close, you can be too far away, and there's so much that there's such a richness of information that has been poured into this in terms of the stats, in terms of the customization. All of the missions are procedurally generated, so you'll never play the same mission twice. There's so much being rammed in to what is on the surface a fairly basic turn-based tactics game that I think that informationally it's hardcore, not difficulty-wise.
Okay, well then I'll expand on it. I don't think the systems in this game are very complex. I also think that the majority of the problems with understanding the game doesn't come from a level of granularity or like sandbox systems interacting with each other in a way that takes a couple hours to kind of grasp. I think it just comes from questionable design decisions. I enjoyed my time with the game, but one of the first things that I started to realize was when you first get into that squad screen, you're met with all the information you both are talking about, and it is a little bit overwhelming for the moment. But because the game forces you to use a certain amount of your supplies or yells at you until you've used a certain amount of them, the only choice I had while playing the demo was to spend like the first maybe 10 minutes or so at most just clicking on every box with a little highlight around it in the squad menu until I understood what each of those boxes even had inside of it. So I understood, okay, this has one list of weapons, this has another list of weapons, this has a list of armor, this has a list of equipment. And then I saw the vehicle, and I saw essentially, I think what the problem is, and this goes back to the other conversation we haven't had yet about the level of information in this game, or what build of this game we're even actually playing, how much of this is ready and prepared for launch, for even for early access in February. They give you so many supplies in this demo that I essentially was able to max out my squad to their maximum stats. I paid no attention to their stats whatsoever. I paid no attention to numbers except for how much it cost for supplies. And I still was able to, before completing any missions and getting any rewards, spend all of the supplies underneath the 70% threshold that it even asked for on the best possible weapons and gear for my squad. And I had 6 squads, including a vehicle, on the first mission. Then I had to deal with the trying to grasp the movement system with the AP and how it works turn-based. But otherwise, I just didn't really think it was very complex. I thought that the amount of supplies they gave you was way too much. I thought that it was silly that no one in the squad actually had a specialization.
You said that you basically kind of breeze into through the game, like your squad was overpowered, if I understood you correctly. And my first play of the game was really interesting because my first mission was defend the point. And I don't know, maybe it was generated in such a way that basically I lost, and I lost it really hard. Like really, really hard. Because I moved squad to one side of the base, and basically they moved from the other side of the base, and that's it. I lost. And I tried the same mission twice, and then I tried this game again today, and the first mission I got was clear map. and it was so damn easy. I didn't even had to try anything because I simply moved and clicked stuff and they killed each other. Like, for sure it's early access and for sure that's a demo, but like if I would stop on my first playthrough of the game, I would say it's really, really hard game. But if I would start with the second playthrough, I would say, okay, it's easy enough. You can just click through it and like let's I don't know, let's discover all the options along the playthrough.
Just because they're giving you all of the things to be able to have a successful playthrough, which is, it makes sense. They want people to feel that they can beat this game. So just because they're making it easy in terms of you can just max out all of your squads and have this Giga Chad team running through the mission and completing it, doesn't take away from the complexity of the systems. So maybe we have to disagree there, because I think that there's a lot of information being crammed into this, which makes it complex, which makes it hardcore. This is not a game where you can just pick it up, click play, and go and blast things. You have to go into the squad screen, and yeah, but it sounds like you just randomly just clicked on anything and maxed it out, and then you went and you played. But I think what they're doing with the demos, they're giving you a taste of the amount of customization that can be done. And because we don't know, and I think it's probably a nice time to come on to this particular subject that we've been kind of teasing for the last 15, 20 minutes, because we don't know what's going to be in early access, despite it being only 9 days away. Maybe with the demo, they're just saying, we want people to see how many options there are, and we want them to have a positive experience. So we give them far more than what they can use in order to go and successfully complete the demo. But then the actual game, when it released into early access yesterday, time travel stuff's really, really weird. Maybe it'll be a different experience.
You see, and I agree with you completely. We don't know what the game will be like because we played the demo before the early access. But what I feel and what I think Jack had in mind, that the design of the demo itself is not good. Okay, game may be great. I have some really good things to say about it, and maybe we'll talk about it later. But I'm pretty sure that this demo could be designed better.
Of course it could be. Of course it could be. Because all they're doing is giving you the combat. And this is perhaps where my concerns come from. All they're doing is saying, this is the combat systems. Now, is this because the strategic layer isn't complete at the point where they release the demo? Is this because the strategic layer won't be complete when they launch early access? I mean, that would be unforgivable, wouldn't it? You know, I appreciate that we've often said about early access, it's paid beta testing. But surely they're going to have the strategic layer in the early access release. They must have, Jack, right? They must have.
I hope so. I hope that the early access has the strategic layer. I hope it has far more content on the actual star chart, or however they're going to map out their missions. I hope that there's presence of the Menace faction besides the pirates. I hope that they have a different variety of enemies in the first place. And I also hope that there's content that they custom made for the demo for the sake of the bad design decisions that Adam and I spoke about, so that they could hopefully make some changes that I would just prefer personally for the early access.
Is that because you want it to be harder than what you've experienced?
No, but I want it to make more sense.
Can you expand on that? What do you mean?
Part of what I was trying to touch on before about the design decisions. Like Adam was saying, it is about the design of the demo, but it's also that we talked about how many options there were, how much granularity there was, but one of my core issues is that generally when you play a tactics game, and I don't think that every tactics game necessarily needs to follow this exact format, but generally they push you in those games by giving you squads or units that have a specialization or a purpose. The thing about Menace is that I have seen no evidence whatsoever that even though they name these characters randomly, they give them a random rank, and they give them a name for, like, they give them a code name. They give them some, like, background details. None of that actually affects their stats. Every character has the same base stats, and the only time you see them change are when you give them equipment. So the way I actually played the game was, I found a sniper rifle, I gave the sniper rifle to one of my units, I gave them the lightest armor that there was, and then I gave them an SMG for close quarters combat, so that they had the weapon with the furthest reach and the weapon with only one of the cheapest weapons I could give them to save myself resources for someone else. When it came to another character, I just made up my own version of it where I gave them the heaviest armor, I gave them a rocket launcher, their equipment was an anti-tank launcher, and then I also gave them something like an assault rifle. For two other characters, I gave them both heavy machine guns, tons of ammo. Like I kitted out my squad so that they fulfilled very specific roles. The thing is, nobody actually has to do that. There's nothing in the game that says that if you give a squad member a LMG, a light machine gun, or even a heavy machine gun, that they should also be the person that carries the most of the ammo for the squad, right? That was the way I leaned into those characters, and I think that it benefited my run. But the thing is that there's no specializations. There's no reason to push you one way or the other. It's really just about making that up for yourself.
That's not completely true, though, is it, Jack? Because each of the squad leaders has an initial skill, doesn't it? Like I think one of them is like a close quarter specialist. He has the guerrilla promotion already, so his defense is better when he's closer to the enemy. There's another one which I think one of the ones you can give them is like a camouflage, concealment skill. So they're kind of, I push them towards being up at the front, close support, or sitting at the back with the sniper rifle supporting you. So I think that each of the squad leaders is almost through aesthetics and through the initial promotion that they have is being pushed into a certain type of combat. Or have I just misread that completely? And I'm sure you could give them anything you want, but I think it's almost as if, and even down to the names, I think one of them was called like the Unseen. So it's like size unseen or something like that. So you're kind of thinking, well, they're called this, I should use them in a certain way. These are game design decisions to kind of push you to use a particular squad leader in a particular way.
Yes and no. You are right that they are game design decisions to try to push people in a certain way, but the thing is, when it comes down to the actual way that these work, of the 6 squad leaders that they provide you in the demo, at least 2 of them have an initial skill that has nothing to do with combat. One of them just provides a bonus supplies or a discount for supply costs for every other squad leader, and another one just provides a discount for promotions in the future or increased gain of experience for promotions, which by itself does not discipline either of those squad leaders into any particular type of combat. The others, sure, and yes, there is some background information that suggests that one might be better with the sniper rifle because they don't get detected very well. The thing is, though, is that one of the first things we touched on in this episode was the amount of information this game gives you. And I think something that we've always talked about on the podcast and that everyone who plays strategy games knows is that every time you play a strategy game, you're gambling about whether or not you're opening up some encyclopedic, like, Necronomicon of information and have to try to figure out what stats do what and who does what and which character came from where. It's like, I mean, God forbid you're playing a strategy game for an established IP, because then you have to understand how these characters exist in this world and understand the world, which is something you already have to do for easier games, but now you have to do it with hundreds of units and knowing their stats and their specializations. The thing about Menace is it's giving you a litany of information, but almost none of it actually has any impact on the actual gameplay mechanics for the most part, except for the actual items that you're choosing. And then so essentially I was able to just play a game where I matched pictures to pictures. I matched heavy weapons to additional ammo, and I matched vehicles to the biggest guns. I matched characters I just thought should wear heavy armor and carry rocket launchers just because I wanted them to. And so design-wise, none of that actually impacted the interplay of the game mechanics. In fact, after I beat one of the first missions, I was able to claim a reward, and the reward was a pirate outfit and armor that was heavier armor than I already had and allowed me to boost jump up to 7 tiles, but it was risky. So I immediately equipped that onto the RPG guy, and then now I had a unit that just by my own choosing, because there's nothing that pushes this or forces a particular squad leader, I could have had anybody on the roster outside of the vehicle-specific character put on this armor, launch 7 tiles, and then blow up somebody with an RPG point blank. And so that was just something I chose. There wasn't an interplay of design decisions that ultimately decided that. It was just sandbox mechanics, which I do love. Don't get me wrong, I love sandboxes that you can combine mechanics and make them work. But there's also not a direction being pushed by any of these mechanics to force you to play one way or the other.
You see, yeah, and I agree, but you see, the question is if it was the design choice for the demo and early access will also have this issue, or to showcase you all the options, to showcase you 6 different type of guns. I as I remember, like there are 6 different type of armors. There are like 10 types of modifications. Every squad has its own skill tree and so on and so forth. Or is it like each run in the normal game will also start with the same setup? Because if that's the case, as far as I remember in Battle Brothers, they did quite a similar thing, because you had a team of people, but that could either like these units could fight in melee combat or in being an archer or stuff like that. During the game, the equipment they got and the traits they got distinguish each and every other one from each other. And in this game, maybe it will happen in the same way. What my problem is that in the beginning you get, like in Battle Brothers, you didn't get so much information in the beginning, and easing it to get in the game was much easier, because you eventually in this type of game you lose. Because I don't know even if this game will be roguelike or not, but I believe it will be, due to the fact that it's procedurally generated stuff like that. If it is, then eventually you will lose. So when we look from the perspective of Battle Brothers, it was much easier to ease you into the game. You discover something, you start again and try different, experiment and stuff like that. In this scenario, if the design will stay like in the demo, I don't feel the urge to discover the system, because it's, as you said, it's like you played by the pictures, not by the informations. So why they gave you so much information then?
That brings me back to my general larger complaint with this game, which is anytime you make a sandbox game, you are creating systems, having them interplay together, and that provides almost endless entertainment for a player. The thing about strategy games is people play them generally because they like to see how far they can go, or they just like to win. So I want to try to explain this as briefly as possible. The problem with making a sandbox game is that there has to be some form of direction. And so obviously Menace has these interactions where they want you to go through these missions in this order, and then doing so even completes the demo. You can clearly go from start to end in a situation. The problem is that I just feel like the character you choose does not affect the equipment that they use. The content of the game is not set up in any way that forces you to play one way or the other. The demo had no enemy variety outside of some other enemy vehicles that forced you to do one decision over another. The direction your units take when they walk is largely doesn't matter unless there's cover in the way or not. It's just one of those things where I feel like when you're making a sandbox game, there has to be some kind of purpose. So what we really need to see from the full game is a bunch of different enemy types. We need to see things that force the player to interact in one way or another. We need to see situations or the way the game plays force using certain types of equipment, because otherwise this game feels to me like we'll just have a meta. It feels like if you play the game long enough, you'll find the best weapons in the game and know to always use them. And you'll find the best, maybe squad leaders in the game with their own stats, and you'll always use them. And maybe you'll always take certain paths in the world of Menace, or fight certain enemies, or choose certain mission types, because I do think that the defense mission that Adam said he had sounded way harder than the ones that it gave me. I never had that objective. Mine was to sabotage 2 things. It was to defend civilians, and then it was 2 of them were just to eliminate like 70 or 80% of the pirates on the map. There was even times I was in the middle of conflict in a mission, and I would reach that threshold, and then the game would just end. I didn't even have to kill the other ones that were currently threatening my units. In fact, the best mission I played was the sabotage 2 objectives, because I had to get all my units back to an evacuation point. I thought that part was pretty cool. But that is to say that it feels like we don't know what the rest of the game is going to have. And I think that that's a really big problem for this, because it goes back to, I feel like the demo was fun. I don't know what the early access has, but if the early access is reminiscent at all of this demo, I think it'll just be kind of disappointing. Because while the gameplay's fun, nothing you do, a lot of the individual micro decisions you're making don't really matter. It's just throw on the biggest weapon, or throw on the weapon that makes sense, you know? Like a rocket launcher's a rocket launcher, an EMP grenade's an EMP grenade. And so that is to say, there's not a lot of information on this game, guys. I don't know what you know, but I sure know squat for the rest of this game.
And that brings us nicely on to what my initial thoughts were, having played the demo and having looked for information. It seems to me unprecedented that we are And I said at the start, Early Access has now released. It released yesterday if you're listening to this episode on the day of release. But we are 10 days away from release at the point of recording this episode. The complete lack of information about this game, about what's expected in Early Access, about roadmaps, about inclusions. Should we be concerned about that? This is a game that's been delayed twice, 2024, 2025, we're now 2026, and it's finally been released into Early Access, so not a full release. Should we be concerned by the fact that we have no idea yet? And I did actually ask in the Hooded Horse Discord, I said, do we have any information about what's going to be included in the Early Access release? And I did get an answer. Are you guys concerned by this?
I'm concerned. And I think if you're a listener listening to this episode and the Early Access has come out with this episode, you're probably sitting there. Maybe you played the Early Access. Maybe you're catching this episode a few days later, and you're like, these guys are all chums. I played the Early Access. It has a bunch of fun stuff. Al has egg on his face. This game is a blast, and it has a bunch of really cool features. I think we're taking a major gamble here, sure. Maybe the Early Access will blow people away, and maybe it will fix all of my complaints. But I think the real reason why we're making this episode the way that we are is because this is just really unprecedented, future listener. This game was announced 2 years ago. It was picked up by one of the biggest strategy publishers in the world at this point. Hooded Horse has now published multiple major iconic strategy franchises. They've picked up existing strategy developers from all over the world who have previously published under different companies, and they've created a coalition of games. And here we are with Menace, one of the most wishlisted indie strategy games of our time right now. This game is highly popular. Its trailers are doing well. It was announced 2 years ago. I want to do something fun here for a second. This is only a week before the Early Access comes out, and I just want to read you both a quote verbatim from the Menace wiki from Hooded Horse. This is an article for the main antagonistic faction of the game. Spoiler alert. Menace. The titular alien antagonists of the game, period. Almost nothing is currently known about them, save that they are biomechanical horror that poses a threat to all of the vying factions of the Wayback System, and possibly all of humanity should the player fail to stop them. And that's the end of the article. There is a second article, which I don't even need to click on, and it says aggressive alien wildlife. I clicked on that one, and the picture was a piece of concept art, and it says unfinished artwork of the aggressive alien wildlife that you may see in the game. And this is a week before Early Access, and we played the demo, and all they had were the same, for the most part, like the same general squad formations of pirates that largely I couldn't even tell them apart.
So would it be fair to say that this game is overhyped?
It's funny. It's funny because they're making the game. But I do think, to be fair on the definition, right, hype is born from a game when you don't even know anything about it, right? People are hyped because they want the game to be good. The problem is that we're being very practical here. I'm reading real Wikipedia articles I'm sure anybody can contribute to. We just don't know anything about a game that's about to come out. And the thing is, I enjoyed my time with the demo, but I don't know what I'm looking forward to in the Early Access. It's a lot like some of the other larger strategy games that we're looking forward to right now, where our biggest complaint is, what is going to be in the game? How do these systems work?
All right. The thing is, in defense of Overhype, they don't have to tell us this information. So I'll leave it there. They don't have to tell us. My concern is this. We have Overhype Studios who released Battle Brothers, which is, I think, so 88% positive reviews. It's done really, really well, and it's very much a well-regarded independent strategy game. You have Hooded Horse, who are the indie darlings. We love Hooded Horse, and we've mentioned them several times, and I think Jack said at one episode in the past, we should be sponsored by them, because every episode we talk about Hooded Horse, and of course we do, because they're massive in the strategy indie scene. My concern is this. We are allowing Overhype and Hooded Horse to get away with this complete lack of information because of who they are. And if it had been Ubisoft, Paradox, EA, any major publisher who didn't have the indie darling tag to them, we would be eviscerating them. We would not let them get away with the way they've handled this. As you say, we're now 10 days away from the Early Access, and we don't know anywhere near enough about this game to say, well, actually, this is a game I want to play. Are they just counting on the fact that, are they counting on the brand of Overhype, Battle Brothers, and Hooded Horse to be able to push this game for people to buy it, rather than saying, guys, this is the kind of stuff you're going to be playing. And should we be concerned about that? Because I am.
I wonder how this episode will age. Because maybe in the week time, everyone will be like, oh man, like, what are you talking about? Everything is clear. There's lots of information about it. The description is updated on the Steam page. Like, guess what we are talking about? But I kind of agree with you. If this was a deliberate choice of them to give us this amount of information, I do believe then that the demo was unnecessary.
Maybe it is a legitimate marketing strategy because we're doing an episode on it and we don't know very much about the game. So maybe it is genius marketing on behalf of Hooded Horse to say, we won't tell people enough about this game so that people are desperate to know. That informational vacuum draws people in. That's just the way that it works, because people, they want to fill, humanity wants to fill gaps in their knowledge, and it's like, well, we don't know what's in there, so we think and we use conjecture to try and work out what it might be. So maybe it's clever. And you're right, this might not age well, and this is why I said at the start, disclaimer, I hope this ages badly, and I hope that when this episode launches, I've been playing Menace for 24 hours on early access release because it's fucking brilliant. Because early access launched and it's amazing. It's everything that anybody could ever want in a tactical turn-based game. So I actually really hope that I'm wrong. I just don't think that it's fair. So the episode after this is where, spoiler alert, we sit down and we absolutely kick the living shit out of Paradox for their DLC strategy, for their broken release strategy. And I think that it's only because Hooded Horse are riding on this wave of goodwill from the audience that they've been allowed to get away with this. And this is my question to Jack. If this had been Ubisoft, EA, Paradox as a publisher, pulling the same kind of trick with not telling us stuff, would we be, oh, we can't wait? Or would we be saying, what are they playing at? Is it double standards?
I think the problem is that this is just not a viable strategy. Because what we're waiting for isn't another demo. It's not Steam Next Fest where we know they're going to be releasing something. This is early access. Battle Brothers is priced at $30 as a standard for them. This game might release with the same or similar price tag. And I really enjoyed the demo. I'm also particularly just very stingy about the games that I buy. I think that if a larger publisher was making this game, publishing it, and they were in charge of the marketing strategy, we would absolutely have major reservations about it, because their games are either going to be priced similarly or more. And it's just really unorthodox to expect people to want to buy a game in only 9 days' time. And maybe they're going to have a really crazy marketing run up to the early access release within the next 9 days. If so, that would be wonderful. And this episode ages poorly. But I don't think, no matter who it is, unless there's a reason for us to expect the lack of transparency, we're going to have issues with this strategy. I don't see the appeal. I mean, there's nothing immediately captivating about a story that they haven't really told us very many details on, where I want as few spoilers as possible. There isn't any major twist to the gameplay mechanics that I can expect from this game to already be really willing to hand over my $30 for it when it comes out in 9 days, and be prepared to not have any articles mention that game mechanic. As far as I'm concerned, I will have to wait for the game to come out, see other people's reviews, hear about our review code, and understand whether or not the game is worth the $30 because it actually even has the alien factions that they promised 2 years ago.
I think that Overhype and Hooded Horse are getting a pass because of the pedigree and because of the belief that the community has in these two organizations to be able to release a brilliant game.
As a side note, there's one clue about what may be in the game. There's a screenshot of the spaceship on the Steam webpage. So maybe there's some space battles in there and stuff like that, because on the Battle Brothers game, the huge part of the game was moving on the map. And here we had this like mission scenarios one after another. But getting back to the subject of this marketing scenario, there is one case that I do believe that this marketing tactic is deliberate, and unfortunately is not good, and it is like this bad apple scenario. I imagine that it could be the case that Hooded Horse decided to publish the game, and maybe the game is not good enough or not finished, or there are some issues with it, and decided simply to be silent about it, to make a silent release. Let it be that way, because what I see in the gaming industry, sometimes this silent publishing tactic is being done when you want to cover your losses. I know. I believe you understand what I mean.
Do and the fact that there's the spaceship which is on the page is the base of operations for your squad of misfits, marines, criminals, whatever, which form the basis of your forces. It's the TCR and impetus, and it's your home base. And my understanding is on this game, you respond to distress calls. So you'll go to a particular system when you're called to go there on your spaceship, and then you're deployed to the ground. I haven't seen anything, and Jack can correct me if I'm wrong here, I haven't seen anything which suggests there's any kind of space combat. It's a purely ground-based tactics game. You can support with missiles and strafing runs and things like that, but I don't think there's any indication that there's actually space combat in this.
Yeah, I haven't seen any space combat. The ship does have a screen that'll be probably in the early access. So we know based on the release date trailer, 2 or 3 menus that we definitely didn't have in the demo. There's the ship menu where you can actually, similarly like the squad menu we all saw, you can change out armaments on it. So the things that you would use in strafing runs, probably, I think there's like a radar icon. So there's that. There's also an armory screen separate from the squad screen that lets you probably actually customize your characters even further. I didn't see that in the demo. And there's also a star chart, which is what lets you explore the systems and travel from planet to planet and interact with the different factions. So there will be like a system in that way, but the star chart kind of looks like an actual chart of planets that you're traveling between.
In the demo, you have Intel level 2, and I think in the base game or in the early access game, you'll start at a lower level, and as you increase the sensors or whatever on your home base ship, you get further intel to be able to see composition of enemies, where they are, more information. So it is going to be upgradable.
Yeah, it makes me question. So I know it's a very fluid thing, and this is a much larger point to be getting into at the last minute, but the game is described as a turn-based tactical RPG. And I feel like the RPG would be doing a lot of heavy lifting if the only roleplay mechanics I saw in the game so far were the skills and the skill tree for each of the squad leaders. But like I said, they seem to have very little effect on oftentimes even on the type of combat or on the general gameplay, that unless there's definitely story choices or dialogue in some way or a way to walk around your ship and interact with various NPCs to determine, like, I don't know, there's a lack of any of that in the demo that gave me an idea that it was an RPG in any way.
It's a complete lack of information.
In Battle Brothers, you move across the map and you go to the town, speak with a bunch of people, you had this equipment. Basically, here you have equipment too, but due to the fact that this is about squads, it's less of an RPG, more of the features you give to your units. But last thing that I want to mention, and like we said lots of bad stuff about the game, but I want to praise it a little bit. I really like the art style of it.
I want to be clear, because I think it's important. I really enjoyed the demo, and I really enjoyed the combat. And I think you're right, the art style is brilliant, and it looks amazing, and it looks, quote unquote, realistic for a science fiction turn-based game set in a system thousands of light years away, or wherever it is. Is it the Wayback System or whatever it's called? So I thoroughly enjoyed the demo, and I didn't expect to, and that's, I think, the thing that really stuck with me is I was like, I'm going to play it. I played it when the demo first came out, and I knew we had this episode coming. So I'm going to have to play it again, and I didn't really want to, but I'm pleased I did because I really enjoyed the way that it worked and the mechanics and the challenge. And I don't like to be challenged when I'm playing games. I like to play games to enjoy them, but I really enjoyed the challenge and the puzzle element. You've got to kind of work out, how am I going to do this? And it took me a long time to understand what I see as the complexity of how it works in terms of the turn-based mechanics of the fact that there's no initiative system, there's no Overwatch system. These are all deliberate design choices in order to me, to make the game harder than what it would be. You don't know which of you can use any unit in any order per turn, and the complete lack of Overwatch to some would be a real negative, but to me it makes me think I have to think a lot harder about how I'm going to do this. I can't just move a unit, stick it on Overwatch and pray for the best. I have to be very, very careful and cautious, and I really appreciate that. So I don't want to come across as negative about Menace the game, because I really, really enjoyed it. I'm cautiously optimistic. And of course, yesterday the early access release came out, so I could be playing it now whilst you're listening to this episode, because I did really enjoy the demo. My complaint or my negativity or my concerns comes from the handling of the release by Hooded Horse and by Overhype. And I hope, beyond hope, that I'm wrong.
So you are not overhyped, you are underhyped.
Yes. I'll take that. If there's nothing from anybody else, we'll call it an end to proceedings. Menace is linked in the description. Go and have a look at it. See what you think. If you think it looks great, if they've given us loads of information when they release this when they release this early access version, then give it a try. If you're not sure, if you think, well, are we going to be going into early access hell? Are we going to be waiting 2 years before the release? Somebody on the Steam forum said we'll have a release in 2029. I know they were maybe taking the piss a little bit, but that's the risk with early access. But go and check it out, because I think it's got a lot of potential. And if you have played it, and if you think I've made a complete arse of myself by having these complaints, come to our Discord, find me, and tell me, because I'd love to hear from you. Adam, thank you very much. You can go to bed now because you look exhausted. Jack, thank you very much, as always. This has been the Critical Moves podcast. If you've listened to this and you've made it this far, then please follow or subscribe, regardless of which platform you're listening to us on. And that's the end of the episode. So thanks very much. Take it easy. Goodbye.